Hi everyone, this is Alyssa and you're watching Always Cinema Chic. What I want to do for this video is actually talk about all of the movies that I watched in September of 2020. So I've seen so many movies this year and it's not just because of the quarantine. If anything, that slowed me down a little bit because I was watching so much from January to March. I'm going to go through all the movies that I saw in September and break it down into the bad, the mediocre, meaning movies that I would not necessarily recommend, but they weren't bad. And if you get them for free and you see them on Netflix or Amazon Prime, then it might be worth it depending on the type of day it is and what your mood is. And the movies that I saw that were good, and then the ones that I saw that were great. Now, there are definitely a lot of movies that I have seen on this list already from September, but some of them I hadn't seen for a really long time. So it was nice to go back and see how I remembered it in the past and then what I thought seeing it now at this particular moment in time. And I can say certain movies that I used to watch when I was younger, and I'm saying 15, 20 years ago, that I thought were the greatest movies ever. I've now had a rude awakening with how utterly awful they are. So let's start with the bad, because we're gonna find a few of those here. I don't think that many movies are bad. I'm the kind of person, and I hope you can tell, that I always try to find the good in a movie. I don't want to just rip it apart, but these movies were just three were the worst. Drunk Parents I saw on Netflix, and then Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. You're going to see a lot of Batman on this list because I've been going through all of the movies and going in chronological order. And the last one I saw was The Dark Knight, which is obviously not on the bottom of this list. But I could not believe how awful Batman Forever and Batman and Robin actually were. Now, when I saw Batman and Robin, I remember hating it, but this is not the case for Batman Forever. I used to watch this movie non-stop when I was in high school. This was my go-to movie. I thought it was so much fun, and I definitely haven't seen it since high school. And so I thought, oh, this is going to be a fun trip down memory lane. And I love Val Kilmer as Batman. And then I watched it, and it was so offensive within the first 3 seconds of the movie, where they had the close up of the cod piece. And that, I was like, oh my God, this is actually really bad. And Val Kilmer is super unlikable as Batman. I don't know why. I do know why I liked him so much. I had a crush on him. But now watching it, I'm like, oh my God, he's probably the worst Batman I've ever seen. He doesn't have any likable treats at all. I felt like the movie was getting promoted by McDonald's, or it was just so bizarre and such a huge leap from the Tim Burton movies. But I will say this about Batman Forever: it was a fun movie to make fun of as I was watching it. So my husband and I were watching it. We were making fun of it the whole way through, and it made it more fun because there were shots where you would see a bat and it looked like you could tell it was a puppet. You could tell how poorly made this movie actually was. And, I didn't mind Jim Carrey in the movie. I thought he was actually maybe the best character. Couldn't stand Nicole Kidman's character. I felt so bad that she had to actually endure playing that character. It was almost embarrassing, the lines that she would have to say. And having seen Batman Returns previously and how incredible and how strong Michelle Pfeiffer is, going from that to Nicole Kidman's, psychiatrist character, who's supposed to be smart, but is just one of the stupidest characters ever written, it it actually hurt. But then even worse was Batman and Robin. I could not believe how awful Arnold Schwarzenegger was in the movie as Iceman. I had completely forgot that Bane was a character in this, and he's basically the equivalent of Frankenstein's monster in like an old Universal horror movie. And just what a horrible character. And then Poison Ivy, also a terrible villain. I thought Uma Thurman looked really uncomfortable in the role. Like she didn't envelop the character in any way. And surprisingly enough, for me, George Clooney was the only thing that actually worked in that movie. And I don't remember thinking that when I was younger. I just remember hating it. I had only seen it one other time. But man, these movies were just really, really bad. And then Drunk Parents was something I thought would be silly and fun with Salma Hayek and Alec Baldwin. And it actually started off kind of funny and I was laughing. And then the movie went into this weird direction where it had, the plot, to say the plot was implausible is an understatement. And I don't really care about things like that for a comedy, but this was offensive in some ways, which I was kind of surprised to see a movie in 2018 was so offensive of a movie. And they just looked like they had no idea what they wanted this movie to be about, but they wanted to hang out and have fun because they are all friends with each other. So those are the bad movies that I saw. So now I'm going to go through the mediocre. I'm not going to talk about every single one, or we would definitely be here all day, but I'm going to kind of highlight the ones where, these aren't great movies. They're not even good movies, but if you were bored or depending on the genre and what you're feeling like, it may be worth watching. So I'm just going to run through the list. This is in absolutely no particular order. I'll go through the movies and then I'll kind of go back and highlight the ones that I wanted to talk about. So I saw Tao, which was on Netflix, The Take with Idris Elba, Gemini Man, I saw for the first time with Will Smith. I saw the new version of Emma, the 2021, and I'll talk about that in a second. I saw Red, that action movie with Bruce Willis for the first time ever. I rewatched Double Jeopardy with Ashley Judd. I watched Pacific Heights. I had never seen that before, and I watched it because Michael Keaton was in it. And then I saw the new Netflix movie, Love Guaranteed, with Rachel Lee Cook. And then I saw this movie called In a Relationship, which is on Hulu with Emma Roberts. And then lastly, I saw The Wedding Planner, which I've seen a million times, and it's not a good movie. And I know that, but I still have fun watching it anyway, so you can make fun of me all you want. So the things I want to kind of highlight here are movies where maybe they could have been better. And so this movie, Tao, which is a science fiction movie with Maika Monroe, at first I thought it was a horror movie, and that's the reason I watched it, because I really like the horror movies she's in. I love The Guest. I love It Follows. So I usually will watch movies that she's in. And this one starts off like a horror movie, and she's she's kidnapped and her brain is getting experimented on, but it turns into a movie that's actually about AI. And some of the ideas in the movie are not bad ideas. However, the way the movie was made at points was embarrassing. The acting, not from Maika Monroe, but from the other actor who I'd never seen before. He was actually bad. He was a bad actor. And I'm not used to watching movies where you're just a straight up bad actor in the movie. So that was unusual. And it had an interesting an interesting kind of idea behind it. But at the same time, it just was not a movie that was executed well. And I wish that it was, because it had a certain amount of style to it. It was low budget. I like that it was low budget, but it just didn't pan out in the end. Also, Emma, did I want to like this movie so much, because I love the story of Emma. I really like the 1996 version with Gwyneth Paltrow, but this was beautiful. The cinematography was gorgeous. The production design was amazing. The costume design, and I hope it gets nominated for those things. I do, because if I just turned off the sound and watched this movie, I might have gotten more enjoyment from it because I didn't feel like it had any of the warmth of the story. So the main character of Emma is supposed to be very flighty, kind of whimsical. She doesn't really know what she's doing, but she's not evil and cold. She is manipulative, but she does it because she thinks she's doing the right thing. And Anya Taylor-Joy played this character as if she was just cold. And I didn't get the feeling that she liked anyone in the movie. I felt like everything she did was for her own benefit and never for the benefit of anyone else. And the movie and a Jane Austen novel really has never felt so cold to me as this one. So it just proves that no matter how beautiful a movie is, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to translate well with that story. So I did not really like this adaptation, and I would much rather prefer to watch the 1996 version, where I think Gwyneth Paltrow plays Emma as kind of a little brat who gets what she wants and is very entitled, but she still has a heart and she's not a bad person. And that is key, I think, in that character. I will say the only actor who I thought did a really good job was Mr. Knightley, played by Johnny Flynn. And he was the way that I've always envisioned Mr. Knightley to be. I would say he was maybe the only actor who I actually liked in the film. The girl Mia Goth who plays Harriet, whew, she did something with her voice that I couldn't watch it. It was just incredibly annoying. So that kind of stood out to me as something that could have been better. And then I just saw this movie last night called In a Relationship. It's on Hulu, Emma Roberts, but then it also stars Michael, I want to make sure I say his name right, Angarano. I've only ever really seen him in the Stanford Prison Experiment, where he is one of the correctional officers who are taking on that role and he becomes the leader. He is a very strong actor. And while the movie In a Relationship wasn't a good movie, and it was a very basic movie about being in your 20s and being in a relationship and whether it's worth it or being with that person or wanting to be single, and it was to me a pretty basic story, and it wasn't told in any way that we haven't seen before, but his performance really stood out to me, and he, I think, is an actor that I'm going to keep an eye on a little bit more than maybe I did before and go back and watch some of his movies, because he was the only thing that really worked in the movie. And it only solidifies more that I don't think Emma Roberts is a very good actress. She fits in campy roles, but she can't really go outside that sort of genre of movies. So I'm going to move on from there and go to the good. I like talking about, which movies were my favorite, which ones I think were really great. So these, once again, no particular order at all. What I saw was Batman Returns, My Best Friend's Wedding, Radioactive, that's on Amazon Prime right now, The Social Dilemma, so the documentary, Pink Wall, that was with Jay Duplass, Get Duked on Amazon Prime, that was a fun one, and then Possession, The Old Guard, and I just saw Enola Holmes about 2 days ago. So all these movies I thought were really good, and I feel like with this, I would recommend these movies to almost anyone because they do a good job in the genre that they're in. So unless you really don't like that particular genre, like maybe you don't like romantic comedy, and so My Best Friend's Wedding may not be for you, but for me, it's a really good example of romantic comedy because it's different and the main character is so mean and awful, which is kind of fun to watch. So I will say with Batman Returns, it's definitely not one of the best Batman movies, but man, it really is worth watching for Michelle Pfeiffer alone. So if you haven't seen that in a while, I would definitely recommend it because I don't know why, but this summer I've been watching so many movies with Michelle Pfeiffer, and I'm coming to the conclusion that she actually might be my favorite actress, at least in my top 5 working. I don't ever think I've seen her give a bad performance, and I've seen her give such a diverse array of performances. So I want to talk a little bit about Radioactive, which is about Marie Curie, and it stars Rosamund Pike. And it's very different in the way that it addresses a biopic, and some people may not like it. It does have more of a contemporary feel, the way that it's shot. You get that kind of radioactive green in every shot, and it moves around in time. I didn't love the frame narrative, the way they structured it in the beginning. Thought that was kind of cheesy. So there are definitely parts that I didn't think were amazing in this movie, but I like that it tried to be something different in that biopic range. And that's why I'm really excited to see the movie Tesla also, because that's supposed to be really different. And, if you know me, you know I love Ethan Hawke. So I would really be interested in seeing how they do that movie. I saw the documentary, The Social Dilemma. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really strange how they had this sort of fictional story running through the documentary. And I felt like it actually took away from the documentary. And I wish they didn't have it at all, because I would rather get the information and perhaps get a little bit of the other side in the ways that social media can help people. But I thought the whole idea of the AI, well, I mean, if you haven't seen it, I guess I won't say, but no, I will. So spoiler for a second. The whole idea of the AI getting smarter and learning quicker than any human had predicted that it would, I thought that was so interesting. I can't believe this is the reality that we are in. It explains so much of how we've gotten to where we are in this world. But once again, I felt like the information kind of spoke for itself, and I didn't need this very odd movie within a documentary to go along with it. It just made the whole thing a bit cheesier. Also, one of the biggest surprises I saw was this movie called Get Duked, which my husband found. It was on Amazon Prime, and it is this fun British movie that is sort of a mix of like a midsummer, but you throw like some chavs in there, which if you're British, you know what that is. If not, it's, like a bunch of teenagers who like wearing tracksuits and are a little bit obnoxious. But I loved that the movie had such a important metaphor, which I was not expecting at all. So as you're watching it, you realize, wait a minute, this isn't just a movie about a bunch of kids who are kind of delinquents, who are in the woods, who are supposed to like go on this hike that's going to change who they are. And then they end up getting like hunted by people who own the land. And it's very funny and it's very bizarre. And it had also elements of The Hunt, but it was better than The Hunt. And I won't say it was better than Midsummer, but it was just a really fun movie, funny movie. The acting was great from all of the boys who were in it. I don't recognize any of the actors, but they were all so fantastic. Cheesy. I mean, at points, teenage humor, but I can definitely get on board with a movie like that when it's done well. And it was definitely one of the more surprising movies that I saw that I really, really liked, and didn't expect to have such a positive reaction to this movie. So, I would say watch the trailer. If the trailer looks like something you'd want to see, then you should definitely watch the movie, because if you like the trailer, you will like the movie. Also, I really did like The Old Guard with Charlize Theron. The one thing I hated, I thought the music was just atrocious. I mean, terrible, the music choices. And I get they were going for all female musicians, but to have songs that fit in such a literal way took away from the story in a way I can't quite explain to you. Like, it really, every time a new song came on, I would just get annoyed. And every singer sounded the same. It was like that kind of high pitched, slow, and it was that style of voice that I don't particularly like, and every song sounded like that. So I mean, I'm excited to see where this series will go, and I hope they make another one for Netflix. I just hope they make it a little more stylized in the future, and that they think about more with the cinematography, because there were moments where I thought the cinematography was a little bit basic, wasn't super interesting to watch. But all in all, the acting was great and the story is really interesting. And I love the idea of immortals in general. I think it's a fun idea. And Enola Holmes was another movie. I thought it was really sweet. It was fun. It was fresh enough, even though, we've seen that style of talking to the camera before. But Millie Bobby Brown is really good in it. You feel like you're in on the story with her. It's not a it's not a complicated story, and the twist isn't, you know, the biggest twist, and you can kind of see it coming, but the characters are really likable. Henry Cavill was good in it, and Sam Claflin, and so it was definitely not the best movie I've seen, but it was worth watching. And it had enough style that it kept me engaged throughout the whole movie. So now we are at the great. So here are the great movies that I saw in September, and it is really bizarre because you would never normally see this from me, but there are a lot of superhero movies on this. And I don't think any other month I've seen this many superhero movies, and I saw really great ones. Now, all of these movies, except for two, I've seen before. So I saw the original Batman from 1989. I saw Batman Begins. I saw The Dark Knight, Birds of Prey, which I loved, The Mustang, and The Assistant. So all of these I think are worth talking about. Having rewatched Batman, the 1989 version, I didn't quite realize how much I loved that movie and how visually beautiful it is. There will actually be a review forthcoming, so stay tuned for that. But I also love that contrast of the Chris Nolan movies and how realistic they are, and what a great departure they are from Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I don't think society could have taken one more of those movies. And so to have something that is in such a stark contrast to those movies, that have such a strong philosophical core to them, as Chris Nolan movies always do, it takes the genre and it raises it in terms of what the content is really about. And so, obviously The Dark Knight is my favorite among all of these, and rewatching Heath Ledger's performance, especially right now in 2020, is particularly interesting because this whole idea of a world that in an instant can be chaotic is especially profound at this particular moment. So I would definitely recommend rewatching all of those Chris Nolan movies this year, because it does take on a different light. So I also, surprisingly, I thought I would like Birds of Prey. I thought it would be a fun movie. I didn't realize how much I was going to get into this. And it is definitely on a personal level. It was so fun to just watch these female characters who were, I thought, well written and had a story behind them. It didn't feel like anything was too in your face. I thought it was just so much fun. I just ended up wanting to be certain characters in the movie, which when I get transported into a world, that's when I know that someone has made a great film. I know that so many people didn't like this movie, but I'm not quite sure why. It is shot beautifully. The action sequences are done really well. I saw a lot of different techniques in the action sequences that were worthwhile. I liked that you had such a variety of women, and that you have the police officer who's older, but yet she was just as important of a character. I thought the music was really good. So in the Suicide Squad, I thought, oh, this music, once again, super literal to what's going on. Yes, everyone knows it. It's fun, but ultimately it took away from the movie, and I didn't like Suicide Squad at all. But here, it kept all of the best elements of it. I love Margot Robbie in this movie. There are scenes that are emotional where she's so genuine to the character, and I never feel like she plays anything for a laugh. It really is like she becomes Harley Quinn. And I saw so many reviews where people hated her performance. And once again, it was so authentic and so true to making the character feel like a real person that I will never understand why people don't like her performance in it. And then The Mustang, which I saw about a year ago with Matthias Schoenaerts, I rewatched it, and it is such a beautiful film. about someone who is in prison but is able to train these wild mustangs. And you have the metaphor of, the character being a wild mustang, and then the animal and prisoner being able to kind of connect to each other and understand each other's soul. I love movies that are with animals that aren't cheesy, that are realistic. This is based on a true story. They actually, wild mustangs are trained by prisoners in a certain part of the country. I forget where this takes place. And the movie just feels so authentic and real, and it's slow, and everything just feels incredibly meaningful. So I absolutely adore that movie. And that was a movie from 2019 that I think could have gotten lost on some people because there were so many great films that came out. I remember when I saw it for the first time, I was flying back from Disney World, and I stupidly watched it on the plane and was crying hysterically on the plane. So I know never to watch a movie that's a drama that I haven't seen before on a plane, because I was basically holding back tears and just trying to make sure people didn't realize how much I really was crying. And then lastly, and definitely last but not least, The Assistant, which is at this moment in time, I am almost positive this is going to make my top 10 list for movies. I haven't seen that many great movies in 2020, and it is upsetting and it hurts. But this film with Julie Garner, and I can see so many people disliking this because it is just sort of like a, say, 12, 14-hour shift of what this woman's life would be like working for this Hollywood producer, how she is doing all of the grunt work. She's the first one there. She's the last one out. And I didn't know that the movie only took place over the course of one day. I thought this was going to be perhaps even over the course of months, but getting into the specifics of what it was like to be in this kind of job and to see how people wouldn't necessarily say something when they know the guy in charge is doing something he should not be doing, and how they're able to protect him, and that even when you try to speak out, there are just so many layers protecting this person and nothing protecting you for saying anything. And so Julie Garner absolutely deserves, from what I have seen so far, a nomination for Best Actress. This is slow. This is calculated. It feels cold at times, and I think it works for what the content is and the purpose of the story. So it's on Hulu right now for free. If you haven't seen it, I would absolutely recommend watching it, because it was not what I expected. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked the structure and the more I liked the way they approached it. It didn't feel big. There was no incredible moment of revelation. There were just these tiny moments that don't add up, and you're working somewhere and you know it's not right. You know that what is going on in that place is not right, but you don't really have the power to stop it. So I would 100% recommend that film if you have not seen it yet. So that's what I saw in the month of September. My goal is to make sure I let you guys know what I watch every month, because I've been watching so many films and I love sharing it. And plus, I can't do a review on every single one, so it's just a good way to talk about what kind of stood out and what was the most fun and what maybe you should stay away from, or maybe what you should watch and make fun of, because sometimes that's fun too. Okay, so I totally forgot to say that I wanted to know what movies you guys saw in September. What were some of your favorites? What were some of the worst ones? And I especially love when people talk about movies that they've seen again, and then maybe you see it in a different light. So I would love to know what you guys have seen, and if you saw any of the movies that I mentioned here and you really liked it or didn't like it. I would love to hear about that as well. So thank you so much. And if you like the channel, please subscribe, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.